very good day to everyone. Welcome to the third episode of our Readings on Civilization lecture series, organized by the Center for Malay Islamic Civilization Studies. I'm Farhina Tariq, and it is a distinct privilege to serve as your moderator for today's session. To lead today's session, we are honored to have back with us Professor Dr. Ahmad Murad, who has masterfully guided us through the first two episodes of the series. Having had the true privilege and delight of studying under Prof. Murad last semester, I can personally attest to the profound depth he brings to his students. It is an absolute honor to welcome him back today to continue this vital intellectual journey. Thank you, Prof. Also, making today's gathering exceptionally special, we are deeply honored to be joined by Her Highness Tunku Aziza. Thank you for joining. I would just like to do a little summary of the last two episodes. So in the first episode, we studied with Prof. Murad how basically he helped us challenge the idea that the West is not just a geographical location, but it is a historical and ideological construct. And in the second episode, we expanded on that concept by understanding the othering process and binary oppositions, demonstrating how these frameworks directly tarnish local identity and knowledge structures. Today, inshallah, we will be bridging these concepts further, Prof will be guiding us into how these discourses structure actively as tools for global representation and dominance. So without any further ado, I would want Prof. Murad to start his lecture. The floor is yours, Prof. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Sister Farina, for the introduction and for the brief summary of the last two lectures. Today is the third session on the Readings on Civilization, continuing on the Stuart Hall's classic essay, the West and the Rest, Discourse and Power. With us today are students and friends and colleagues, and we have former Deputy Vice Chancellor of Malaya. She's in linguistics and very much part of the discourse, actually, post-colonialism and post-coloniality. But I'm not going to talk about post-colonialism or post-coloniality. My concept is on colonialism. I think that we need to, all of us, friends, colleagues, and students, we need to internalize what colonialism is. We are all the colonized. We are people outside of Europe, white, brown skin in a white mask. We live in two worlds. One, the Eurocentric world, the other is the so-called indigenous world, or what we conceive as such. This session is part of a series or a concept under the Center for Malay Islamic Civilization Studies, which we call Readings on Civilizations. Readings on Civilizations is to engage the public and our students and whoever is interested on the problems of the modern world. When we talk about civilizations, it's not only about the past things that has gone through 1,200, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years, but it's what is the modern, and the modern is also civilization. Today is the book or the essay by Stuart Hall. And the essay by Stuart Hall, The West and the Rest, Discourse and Power, must be read with at least two other works. Of course, there are many other works that we can read and then we can internalize and we can relate. But these two other works are deliberately chosen so that we can read these together in different ways, having a different background and different foreground as to how we move back and forth in understanding our world, in strategizing and in internalizing problems of the global order, problems of maybe the death of civilization, as Trump would want to put it, or changes in modern civilization. The other two works are Ibn Khaldun's Muqaddimah, which we started reading on the 28th of May 2025. And reading the Muqaddimah is another perspective of knowing things. Of course, Ibn Khaldun was living in a condition of the absence of imperialism, the absence of dominant power, the absence of dominance in terms of ideology, in terms of thinking, in terms of values. Unlike us, when we talk about ourselves, our identity, we're talking about the presence of a dominant power. We're talking about the presence of a dominant ideology. And therefore, we have to negotiate things. We have to emphasize the perspective that we want. And of course, we always are in a position or in a disadvantaged position of not knowing who we are. We are like fish swimming in water, not realizing that we have to depend on water to live. So this is the problem. Even when we talk about indigenization, when we talk about de-Westernization, Islamization, and so on, decolonization, what do we actually mean? What can it mean as such? And if we do not know some of the categories that that is happening in the present day, we would not understand decolonization and nativization and indigenization. We don't understand knowledge from a non-Western perspective. So these terms have its own semantics. And if you read Islam and Secularism by Naqib Alatas, which we're having a second reading next month, you find that Naqib has used a number of terms to define what he means. One is de-Westernization. And a second is Islamization, and third is de-spiritualization, which you can find at the end of this work. So again, when we are faced with the discourse on Islamization, it's looking at it from different ways and different values and different perspectives. And how do we understand and internalize this? So Naqib is quite aware of this understanding or misunderstanding of these terms. And then, so the introduction of Naqib Alatas as part of this reading is to give another form of reading, which is historical, philosophical, and metaphysical. In other words, Naqib's literature here is different from Hall here. Okay? This is the book, and this is part of the book. This is chapter 6 of the book on modernity, okay? Published in 1992, I think. Hall gives a post-colonial reading, okay? Counter-Eurocentric, but mainly post-colonial, okay? Reading of the West. Naqib Alatas gives a de-Westernized reading of the West. Counter-Eurocentric, de-Westernized, Islamized, both deconstruct in different ways, and both complements another. Okay? And so I would advise you, if you want to you're following this, you can read it together. Ibn Khaldun is the overall thing. because as I said, Ibn Khaldun is, let me put it this way, he is a thinker. He is a philosopher of history, okay? And also sociologist. He's a polymath, okay? A polymath in many ways. So again, Ibn Khaldun will be the anchor to this approach. Now, I want to go on with where I left, but before that, there are several things which I need to remind ourselves. Over the last few months, and over the last few years, especially over the last 3 years since Gaza, October of 2023, isn't it? October 2023. Since Gaza and since February of 2026, we are fed with a number of an intense discussion and debate on under the auspices of colonialism. Actually, the words genocide become the buzzword, and since February of 2026, civilization becomes a buzzword. All these are linked together. And in ISTAC, over the last few weeks, we have had at least 2 lectures. One is by Professor Wali Nasser of Johns Hopkins University. Wali Nasser, if you know, is a scholar in Iranian studies, Middle Eastern studies. His work on Iran's strategy is becoming more relevant and significant. It was published early this year. I did a commentary on the work in one of my columns, and he explains the strategy of Iran since 1979 until 2014. The strategy of Iran is determined or colored by a number of factors, and 2 which I resonated and I asked him during the lecture is geography, which he mentioned. The other is loneliness. Iran is lonely. So loneliness as a strategy by the Iranian government. Okay? I don't want to use the term the revolutionary government. I do not want to use the term Iranian Revolutionary Guard. These are biased. These are heavy with connotation, not the Iranian government. So isolation has many forms and many ways. And he explained, when I asked him in Gombak, he explained historically when Iran began to be Shia during the Safavid period, and then isolated because of geography, isolated because of the surrounding geopolitical tensions and situations in West Asia. And I isolated because of its the antithesis that has emerged, which is America since 1978, 79. And the event that has created this enmity was when the Iranians captured, I think about 300 Americans captured the Iranian embassy, the American embassy in Tehran for 366 days in February 1979. So that began this enmity. And since then, America has not been, or both countries have been at war in different ways. And so what does it mean? First, it means that there are forces that are stronger, that want to dominate other societies in this world, that want to destroy other societies in this world. And at the same time, in February of this year, there's a conference on the security, actually European security in Munich in February, when Marco Rubio made a statement which implies that the future of civilizations is Western civilization. And he said that there's only one paradigm in the world, which will be the Western paradigm. And this is a dangerous statement made. One of the dangerous statements made by any power since World War II. You remember World War II in 1946, 47, there are a number of statements made again by the Americans. I remember one when I was doing my work, the American ambassador said that we will use every available means of instrument to dominate the world. That was the beginning of the American world order. That was the beginning of the American information order. Those of you in media communication know. Okay? When in the 70s, when we were studying communication, we were taught the resistance by the Third World, and ultimately they formed the McBride Commission to look into this problem of imbalance of the information flow from west to east and the misrepresentation of information, and they call it media imperialism. They call it media imperialism. But the answer to that is not media or funding. The answer to that is knowledge imperialism, not even culture imperialism. And this book gave the answers in 1978. I knew about it, but I was a student. I was a first-year student. Nobody wants to listen to me. So when I came back and I included this in my thesis, I included it in my second book, published in 2005, of the problem of understanding the flow of knowledge. Actually, it's the flow of the flow of information. Actually, the flow of knowledge. The flow of knowledge is not balanced, and this is addressed in this book. And this is where also Stuart Hall has addressed. But I want to list down the outcomes of colonialism, which will be reflected in the reading of Stuart Hall, and which has affected us in many ways. One is ethnocide. I've repeated this in a number of occasions over the last few years, but this first time I'm writing it down on a slide so that you can see how the words are spelled. And ethnocide. Ethnocide will be ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing happens in any colonial situation. The problem here with us, and I'm repeating this, I've repeated this in recent times. In Malaysia, I'm talking about Malaysia, we have been romanticizing colonialism. You have not taken colonialism seriously. It's a benign phenomenon. Therefore, yeah, we are colonized. So okay, that's fine. We can shake hands with the British and drink coffee or tea with them and so on. Yeah, fine. But in other parts of the world, also in Malaysia, ethnocide happens. The cleansing is ethnic cleansing, linguistic cleansing. You cannot speak your language. For example, in New Zealand, even in Thailand, Malays cannot speak their language. There's another story altogether. What happened in India? When Macaulay came, and it's 1815, they came later than when they came to Penang. Penang was earlier. In 1824, Macaulay came to India and proposed that the Indian system be changed to the British system. The language of India. He criticized, saying that Persian and Urdu are of no use to advancement. That's what Macaulay said. Prof. Khalid, your language. And this is ethnic cleansing, openly written in history. Only perhaps over the last 30 years are the Indians taking it seriously. The Indian movement of the subaltern movement to counter or to create a non-Eurocentric history for India. So, ethnocide, the cleansing of language, ethnicity, identity, happens. And where Palestine is concerned, is a classic case to illustrate what had happened since 1948. The whole history of Palestine, whole identity of those who live in the Palestine, that geography, territory, is meant to be exterminated, cleansed off. Okay? So that's ethnocide. There are many ways to look at it. Second is epistemicide. Epistemicide is the destruction of the knowledge of a people, the knowledge of a people, the knowledge that a people has. And one of the objectives of Nakba, 1948, is to cleanse off the knowledge of the Palestinians from this earth. And also, if we look at other forms of colonialism in other parts of the world, you can find the same thing. The cleansing of that knowledge, the uprooting of so-called local indigenous knowledge by the colonial powers. Third is memoricide. Extermination, the destruction of history and memory of people. And this happened to Penang. This is a case study where the people in Pulau Pinang forgot they are part of Kedah. They forgot the history of Kedah. Memoricide. In other words, the lineage, the genealogy of a person is being cut off. And it's not only Penang, but those other non-European people, non-European, non-white people. And 2 weeks back, Vali Nasser, when he gave a lecture in Gombak, he said that the Gaza war, or the war in Gaza, is between the whites and the browns. That's what he said, ultimately. I know that he's very pro-American. He's pro-American. He doesn't want to rock the boat. He's part of the the university system. He was part of the he was an ambassador for Richard Holbrooke, and he was an advisor to the State Department as such. He was with the State Department. So there was one statement which I picked up. I think as a result of my question, at the end of it, I said war in Gaza is between the whites and the browns. And of course, whites and brown and other non-whites. This is what we have to see. It is, even in death, the Palestinians are not covered. When one French died, the whole world, the whole BBC, CNN would, oh yes, one French died in Paris. But thousands, hundreds of thousands of non-white died under such circumstances. It's not covered. So even in death, there is the othering. You see how cruel things are. And the media is conspiracy to it. And what you find that the death is faceless, no identity, cannot represent themselves. Of course, they did. But again, the process of colonialism, if we take at one point over the last 500 years, you see the initiative of looking at the other of the world as non-human. We are, from the European perspective, we are subhuman. We are dehumanized, but we don't realize it. I'm not being a rebel rouser or being an instigator or provocateur, but perhaps. But we have to know. We have to know that we are looked upon as in a dehumanizing fashion. you look at the policies of the British, the French, the Dutch, and the Spanish and the Portuguese. They dehumanize the world. Okay? So again, that's memory side. And then ecocide. Ecocide means the destruction of flora and fauna. A good example of ecocide is when the Israelis blocked the source of water in Gaza. I think it appeared last week, I think. So that's ecocide. And then medicide. I just added this last week, actually. Medicide is the destruction of traditional medical systems. No, these are used in a linguistic semantic way. Side means destruction and kill, like pesticide. Pesticide. These are pesticides. You kill pests. Pesticide. So it's the same thing, same meaning, same semantic. So medicide has two meanings. One is the destruction of the indigenous local health system and its philosophy and its cosmology. The non-Western systems of healing and wellness is based on health. I mean, the assumption is based on health and wellness. The capitalist one is based on sickness. So you have two different philosophies, one philosophy replacing the other. And people don't realize it. They think they see, yeah, we have hospitals replacing the Bobo and Pawang. The other one, having a similar meaning, is the destruction of hospitals, killing of doctors, nurses, medical facilities that you see in Gaza and you see in Iran. That's medicide. When you kill doctors, then who's going to heal and look after the wounded? And of course, epistemicide also, they bomb hospitals, they bomb universities, bomb schools. That's epistemicide. When you bomb universities, you bomb labs, you obliterate the process of knowledge production. When you burn libraries, you obliterate that. So again, also similarly, media organizations. So this is a deliberate, or what you see since 2023, God wants to show us, is a deliberate destruction of the world, of the other, by the other. And we've got to realize it. And that's physical destruction. But non-physical destruction is what? Let's take, for example, ethnocide and epistemicide. The establishment of universities in the non-European world. Establishment of modern universities. Question, what do modern universities study? What do we study in Malaysia? Okay, we have establishment of universities in Western Europe, the Anglo-Saxon world, in America. What do they study? They study about themselves. They study about the world. So when they establish universities in Malaysia, University Malaya, UKM, USM, University of Rangoon, Bangkok. Why I say University of Rangoon? Because University of Rangoon is deliberately established to model law Oxford. Okay? So what do we study? What do we study in Malaysia or the non-Western world? We study them. We study them in the sense that we study them not realizing that we are a clone of them. We are their clone, so we don't study ourselves. When we pursue knowledge in, say, a Malaysian university or an Indonesian university, we are removed and move ourselves away from them. Even if we study heritage, history, preservation, whose history do we study? Whose heritage do we study? What indigenization do we study? What native knowledge we study. So again, I think universities in Malaysia must relook at what we study. Just do with KPIs, corpus, and that kind of thing. Anyway, you are. So again, well, coming back to medicide. So the killing of that, and last is genocide, extermination of a people. And of course, we can see very clearly which is denied by the West. Okay? The West denied, the corpus of the West denied. And one philosopher, Jürgen Habermas, you must know him, German philosopher, listed down in time as the foremost philosopher in the world. But last few years, I disown Jürgen Habermas. Of course, he doesn't care about me. He supports genocide. You're talking about that system. You're talking about the rational intellectual domain, but they do not see what is empirical. They deny the empirical. They deny their own rationality. They deny their own reason. Not a single country in Europe, perhaps now we have a number, I think, recognize the act of genocide in Gaza, also in Iran. It would have been, and after Iran, it would have been us. Just, okay, subcontinent is just close by next door. So from there, it will come here, via the Straits of Malacca. So again, this is something that we have to be very concerned, not only as intellectuals, but also we need to resist. One of the things that we have to do is to resist this calamity and this catastrophe. There are many ways to resist, one of which is this session. The other is, of course, through writing, through influencing policy, and so on. Now, I'm going to part 2 of Stuart Hall. Now, his essay has 7 parts, about 40 pages, 7 parts. The last 2, I think I referred to only part 1. Where and what is the West? What does the West represent? It's a tool to understand. It's a concept. It's an idea. And this is very important for any one of us. And when we want to do our thesis, for example, we have to bear in mind the effects of colonialism. We cannot assume that we do a thesis on the manuscripts, on history, and what Tuanku is doing on the Hukum Kanun Pahang. We cannot assume that the Hukum Kanun Pahang, for example, exists as such. And how we see Hukum Kanun Pahang. And what we've discovered is that the Hukum Kanun Pahang has been described by the administrators, colonial administrators, as legal digest, Malay legal digest. Right? But if we look properly, it is the earliest form of Malay constitution. It is Malay constitutionalism, which people like Winstead, Wilkinson have not described it as such. They look at it as legal digest, and they classify it within the context of Malay literary production. Whereas those are legal codes, those are constitutional provisions which are practiced, which are part of the system of governance, which are consumed and are conscious by the ruler and by the rakyat at the same time. I'm not saying it because Tuanku is here, but I'm giving an example of the new way of looking at constitutionalism before the Europeans came. Our fault is that we think, only when the British came that, for example, Malaya had a constitution, 1948, and then 57, 63. No. even before that, there are many canons. Melaka, Pahang, Kedah, Sambas, Brunei, Aceh. Also, there are many canons in your subcontinent. So these canons would be the indigenous, would be the how to put it, the non Western view of looking at things, and they are used as instruments of government, similar to what we are. Another one in relation to that is we take for granted the idea of the nation state. When you say Malaysia is a country, a nation state, there is maybe I'll go through later. Chapter 2 of this book talks about the origins of the nation state. Now, when people say nation state, yeah, they say, yeah, well, Malaysia is a nation state, there's sovereignty, but there are certain intricacies to the formation of the nation state. One has to go back to the history of Europe in the 1500. The formation of the nation state in 1648, Treaty of Westphalia, and how the nation state eventually became, to Europe, the most efficient way of administering the world, the most efficient way to them. And we are inheritors of that nation state. We have no choice. We have to form the nation state. When Malaysia, Indonesia, and India and Pakistan, of course, you face a very, very. Yesterday I was in Pahang in the symposium on the National Museum. I was citing the problem of India and Pakistan in terms of when you are independent and when you are asked to divide the partition, you are asked to also, or induced to also create your own history. History post-independence, museum post-independence, education post-independence. This is false. We talk about the history of Pakistan, it's false history. I mean, if I were to be a curator, I would curate Pakistani art, nobody would come. If I were to curate it as Indian art, everybody would converge. Because Pakistan is an artificial state with many subjectivities in terms of the formation. So again, the cohesion to have a new history, a new museum, a new nationalism does not give us the genuineness of our lives as a result of the philosophy and the practice of the nation state. So it is a very European phenomenon. And that European phenomenon is not compatible to those outside of Europe. The concept of nation state, there are many. One is land, the criteria, land, people, land, people. You don't have nation state on water. Land, people, sovereignty, and government. These are the four. These are the four criteria of a nation state, generic criteria. And people means having a nation. One state, one nation. That is the idea of the nation state. That would be compatible to Europe. But it's not compatible to those outside Europe. It's not compatible to countries in the African continent. It's certainly not compatible to Asian countries. We have many nations in one state. India has many nations in one state. Indonesia has many nations in one state. Malaysia has many nations in one state. So again, but we subscribe to it. But countries like China, for example, have announced itself as a civilization state. China has not really accepted Western history, actually. China has not really accepted themselves as a part of that global order vis-a-vis the nation state. So also Indonesia, only recently Indonesia announced it as a civilization state about 20 years back. But still, Indonesia to me is a very colonial state in many ways. Anyway, So the first, this is, okay, we're going to chapter 2. Yeah. This is what Stuart Hall writes, present tense. Now, when you do an academic paper, when you do a thesis, there are two ways to do. One is to cite in the past tense. The other is to cite in the present tense. It's different from writing, other forms of writing essays. But in a journal, actually, a good journal would put it in the past tense. Anyway, he said, now he begins part 2, titled "Europe Breaks Out." Europe breaks out. Breaks out. So in chapter 2 of this book, he discusses, or I think there's a person discusses about the evolution of European nation states. Because remember, nation states are a European phenomenon. The voyages of discovery were the beginning of a new era, one of worldwide expansion by Europeans, leading in due course to an outright, if temporary, European domination of the globe. Okay? This statement is made in chapter 2 of this book. The voyages of discovery. You look at the words used. Discovery of what? This is very typical European way of looking at it. The voyages of discovery was the beginning of a new era, one of the worldwide expansion by Europeans, leading in due course to an outright, if temporary, we don't know, it's temporary, but I think we should be optimistic. Perhaps not in our lifetime. And you see the process of history. History is not a linear direction. History is not unilinear. History is not based on Aristotelian logic. It's not one way. Okay? There are cycles, webs, and flows. Refer to Ibn Khaldun. The cyclical theory. Cycles, webs, and flows. But at the same time, as you see, what Hall says and what I'm going to read is that history has its resistance. It's not just one unidirectional movement, but there are loops and there are feedbacks and there are resistance to those movements. 30 years ago, I still remember, I was a student in Minnesota, the US. Where are you from? US, okay. At the time, in the liberal arts department, I was in political science, we were talking about the decline of America. No, we were discussing among the Americans, among my classmates, the decline of America. And there were books and discourses pointing out to the decline of America post-World War II. So the 1980s would be indicative of this decline. But after 40 years, it's still wrong. So what we see here, if we either we live long enough or we internalize things, that things do not move in a straight line within the 40-year period, and perhaps another decade or so, or another few decades or so in future, 2030s, 2040s, 2050s, you'll still find America. Yeah, maybe people say because of Trump, but I think this is with or without Trump. Europe and America will be there. They will resist. Okay? We are resisting them, but they will resist our resistance. There's what do you call it, a pushback from them, which we can see now. Which we can see statements by Marco Rubio in February, which we can see statements by the rightist Trump and the right-wing movement in Western Europe in terms of against the others and against Islam. So they are pushing back. our resistance. In fact, they are pushing back the anti-colonial resistance in former colonized lands, Africa and Asia. And I discovered in recent time that two write-ups, two journals on anti-colonial movements. Published in one in published USM, the other published in Taiwan. And both of these mention my name as anti-colonial scholars and writers. So now the anti-colonial movement is getting ground in terms of they recognize the movement, and these those who write are not necessarily the West, but the Europeanized Asian scholars who have identified that, especially in Taiwan. So this is what Hall says. By the way, Hall is black. Stuart Hall is he's black. He's Jamaican, and he developed a whole trajectory of field or subfield called cultural studies, because when he was staying in Britain, from the 50s, he felt discriminated. He felt that he was racially profiled. He felt that he was not one of the other, not part of the white. So he developed this field, which all of you should know, which is called cultural studies. And there are two others, Raymond William and the other one, which is quite popular in Britain in the 60s and 70s. And in Malaysia, cultural studies is very much ethnicized. It's very British. But India and Taiwan has tried to develop their own cultural studies, China, and also Malaysia. But it don't work. Malaysia, UKM, one of the UKM, yeah. In the year 2000, early 2000, in the restructuring the program, they introduced cultural studies. I happen to be the assessor. I made some comments, not rejecting it, but telling them to adjust their proposal. If they were to introduce cultural studies, and which is actually British cultural studies, to UKM, there won't be any students. So again, but this is what basically the major field that Hall has introduced based on the Birmingham Center of Cultural Studies in Birmingham, when they discovered that the British cultural and media producing apparatus were biased and prejudiced in their coverage of the blacks in the 50s. So now, when and how did expansion begin? Long historical processes have no exact beginning or end and are difficult to date precisely. You remember the argument in chapter 2. If you have read this book, you would have read chapter 2. But anyway, take it for granted. You can find the book in our library and in good libraries. UM library, I'm sure you have. That a particular historical pattern is the result of the interplay between a number of different causal processes. In order to describe them, we are forced to work within very broad and ready chronologies and to use historical generalizations. To the layman, they say, oh, this is generalization. No, historical generalization and generalizations are part of academic work. When we speak from the parlance of sociology, we are making generalized patterns. That's our function. But you find detractors saying that, oh, this is a general statement. No, we are speaking sociologically. And we have to educate the public in terms of what the statement means, in terms of the general patterns, which cover long periods and pick out the broad patterns but leave much of the detail aside. Now, this is very important. Here, Hall is trying to refer to what we call the longue durée. If you read Fernand Braudel, Civilization, one of my students she's doing on that. Fernand Braudel a French historian, he developed the longue durée, Longue-Durée, longue durée. If you go to Spain or Morocco, you have this longue coffee. That's longue durée. Longue coffee, Longue. It's black coffee, long long coffee. Yeah. So it's longue durée. Longue durée means a process covering thousands of years. We're not saying that you have to go to the Pleistocene age, whatever. No, it's not that. But it covers thousands of years, where we can look into the trends and developments in human history and movements. Okay? Ferdinand Brodel has just some of you to pick up this. I suspect also, I think, yeah, he has mentioned, but not so clear, Ibn Khaldun. He said the longue durée is also Ibn Khaldun. But these Western historians would not admit that they take from Ibn Khaldun. On the other hand, they have accused Ibn Khaldun as plagiarism. This is strange. What kind of mind do we have in Europe? Ibn Khaldun lived before them. Time travel. People like, I think, Ika, Spengler. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is a strange thing that has happened to Ibn Khaldun. So we have to. I have one student who, when he proposed his thesis, I said, "How can you write the opposite way? What kind of thing?" Yeah, but he is graduated with PhD. So again, Brodel picked up this one chapter in your thesis. Brodel would have picked up from Ibn Khaldun as such. There is this intellectual proximity. And many European historians like Toynbee, like Spengler, Ika, some, yeah, they mention Ibn Khaldun, but they did not really delve into how they derive their ideas from Ibn Khaldun. The birth and decay of civilizations, for example, by Toynbee and so on. 6-volume work on history. Yeah, but a very reserved kind of narrative on Khaldun. So this is the basis. There is nothing wrong with this. Historical sociology will be possible without it, provided we know at what level of generality or argument is working. For example, if we are answering the question, when did Western Europe first industrialize? It may be sufficient to say during the second half of the 18th century, meaning what, 1750s. Right? However, a close study of the origins of industrialization in, say, Lancashire would require a more refined time scale. And he refers to another part of the book, which is part 1. This book actually is one of my reference on modernity. You want to understand modernity, you as modern men, we as modern men, I would recommend reading this book. Now, we can date, coming back to the breaking out of Europe. You see, again, Europe is a very hollow, isolated territory. It's a peninsula of Asia, and nobody goes to Europe. Nobody has been to Europe. I mean, are we talking about before the modern period? Who the hell would the Japanese or Malay go to Europe? Why go there? It's cold. It's cold, uninhabitable. Life is harsh. It's isolated. So geographically, you can see that Europe is isolated, and this isolation, geographically and climatically, affects their behavior. How weather affects our behavior. I've mentioned this in first class. Why Europe in the modern period has hundreds of philosophies. One, because they have nothing to do during winter. Second, I think because of the harshness of life. You know, when we have been there in winter, it's cold. Even at that time, without electricity, without power, it's cold. It's cold. Okay? Even if we have power, we still feel that. So you can imagine how they challenge the environment. Exactly. We take for granted. In the equatorial tropical, not tropical only, but equatorial, we are, I mean, for the Malays here, we are equatorial tropical people. We have no problem with the weather. Actually, not like Europe. We walk and we pick up rambutan, durian, or whatever, and we eat. That's it. I mean, that's life is simple. Yeah? So again, I'm letting you put this in the background. One, the early Portuguese exploration of African coast, the early Portuguese exploration of the African coast, 1430, 1498. If you go to Casablanca, I was there 2 years back. Casablanca means White House in the Iberian language. And historically, yeah, Casablanca, yeah. Very romantic place. I mean, there's one movie, I think, Humphrey Bogart. Yeah, Humphrey Bogart. Okay. Nice place. And these are the playground of the French, the Spaniard, and the Portuguese, the French especially. I mean, Morocco is their playground. So again, they have come and they have sailed throughout Africa, the coast of Africa, and they went up to the Indian Ocean. These are episodes, very important episodes for us to remember. And I will always remember this. I've been remembering this over the last, 50 years. There's one book. I didn't bring it. Title is Europe and Asian Dominance by K.M. Panikkar. Malayali. He's a historian and ambassador. He described how Europe dominated Asia. Very erudite writing, talking about Japan, China. This was published in the 1940s. And one of the things he said, the Portuguese broke the Indian Ocean, the Portuguese entered the Indian Ocean through the back door. And from there, all civilization was destroyed. 1498. 1498 is the year that Vasco da Gama, and they call it the Vasco da Gama era, 1498. Before they came to Malacca, they already plundered. So for Oman, yeah. First, through spices. Spices, yeah, through spices, yeah, true. Yeah, that's the only, yeah, correct. Yeah, that's the only route from east to west. Without us, without spices, Europe would die of starvation. Yeah. And European food, okay, why Europe? No, why Vasco da Gama came through the back door? There are many reasons. One of which is to get pepper. Pepper is worth its weight in gold. Melayu kata mayam. Pepper is measured in mayam. Yeah? And why pepper? Pepper is to preserve their meat. If not, it goes bad. Yeah? Also, the top gold, polished gold, is always top is very rare in Europe. So they need that gold. Exactly, yeah. Salt and pepper, yeah. And until now, for the Anglophiles, you must have salt and pepper on the table. And that's the basic ingredient for steak. I've got to tell you this, my experience. Lately, I go to this many establishment steak. When I ask for pepper, they do not know what pepper is. I went to the kitchen to ask, actually. Yeah, we do this pepper. I said, what do you use for seasoning? So what happened was that I will bring my own pepper in my pocket of my backpack. When you buy this bottle. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. So we use that. I use that. I use my own pepper. So again, yeah, salt and pepper, exactly. And this is not the culture now. I mean, of course, I'm also Anglophile. I mean, I come from a colonial school. This is my junior, Shukri. He's from Penang Free School. Yeah. I'm white. I'm very European. But they stick to that in brown. Oh, yeah. I'm brown. So I would see it happen. But this is a truism. And too true, when Edward Said said in his Orientalism, he said that since the 17th century, every European is a racist. When I say this in my writings, those pro-Europeans will attack me, saying I'm racist. But again, we have to be open and we have to be literate on what this means actually. Yeah? So again, this is how we experience. I experience, Tuanku experience, and I'm sure others have experienced, but we tend to cast it aside. So Vasco da Gama, Oman, Socotra, the island, the near Oman, Hormuz, yeah. There's a history behind the Portuguese domination. In fact, from East Africa, they went and then Goa, and then Malacca, and then Macau, and so on. Okay? They also went to Japan. I saw this in there's one display in the museum in Kobe, where they brought silk and elephants. But what happened was that the Japanese drove them away. They did not take the silk and elephants from they said that Japanese say this is 1600s. They label the Portuguese as southern barbarians. So again, you see this psyche of the Japanese and the Chinese already having this resistance and this othering of the Europeans, unlike the Malays. Of course, there are different ways. I know there's some extreme way of looking at Malay history in terms of resistance, but again, the Malays did not accept the Europeans in a passive manner. Okay? And this needs to be written and rewritten, but not in an emotional, not in an irrational manner. And then Columbus to the New World, so-called New World, again, important, so-called New World, 1492, 1502. Why New World? Again, the term New World was conjured by this. It was concocted in the European narrative. In European history, there are a number of thinkers or philosophers who coined this term, what we call New World, Novum Organum. Novum Organum is by Francis Bacon, okay? The father of modern science. Francis Bacon was a lawyer. He ended up in jail for corruption, actually. But he was the father of modern science, and he wrote the book, The New Way of Looking at Things, New World. Second is Gambetta Vico. You must know him. He's a European thinker and philosopher, which Edward Said was stimulated and was triggered by Vico's view of the world. Vico also wrote about the new world. Suddenly, the Europeans found a new world. Yeah? And this also is linked to this guy called Sylvester Sassi, the first European to translate Ibn Khaldun in a European language. He's French. So these Europeans, I said, they are kolot, orang darat kolot. They are not open. They are very parochial. Yeah? Historically, they are very parochial. So who opened them up? One is the Renaissance, the Muslims. The Muslims opened them up, gave them knowledge of navigation and mathematics, and this was in Iberia. This was when the Treaty of Tordesillas of 1494, I think. So they opened up, and the Pope also opened up, and these things opened them up as such. So broadly speaking, European expansion coincides. Important. European expansion coincides with the end of what we call the Middle Ages. It's their periodization, important. Okay? The term Middle Ages, Dark Ages, Golden Age. I would want ISTAC students to use it with caution and use it with certain caveat, and use it with a footnote. Do not use it as part of your text and part of your perspective. No such thing as Golden Age of Islam, no such thing as Middle Age in Islam, no such thing as Dark Age in Islam. Okay? Because those are simply put Orientalist view of the world. There's one good article, I think, being published by TAFHIM, IKIM Journal. I think you look for it. I reviewed the article and recommended it to be published. How Europe, how we Muslims and us came to subscribe the idea of the Golden Age as suggested by Europe. Okay, so with the end of what we call the Middle Age and the beginning of the Modern Age. Feudalism was already in decline in Western Europe. So when we talk about Europe, essentially we're talking about Western Europe, much of the Anglo-Saxon world, not Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe and the Slavic world, although technically part of Europe, historically part of Europe, culturally have a problem. And they also, where the Russians are concerned, would refuse to be part of the European community, part of the European culture and history. You look at the statements made by the Russians, and especially Russian philosophers, Tolstoy, for example, Russian literary figures, for example, Dugin is another modern philosopher. They refused to be part of the Anglo-Saxon world. So feudalism was declining in Western Europe, while trade, commerce, and market were expanding. The centralized monarchies of France, England, and Spain were emerging. This was in the 14th, 15th century. Europe was on the threshold of a long secular boom in productivity, improving standards of living, rapid population growth, and that explosion in art, learning, science, scholarship, and knowledge known as the Renaissance. Okay, Renaissance, as you know, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and you see, you're familiar with Michelangelo's painting on the Sistine Chapel. True. Why? Because he, you see, it was the work of Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci wants to destroy him, wants to destroy his reputation. So he suggested to the Italian king, why not ask Michelangelo to paint? He knows it's difficult. Of course, it's quite impossible, very impossible to paint on the ceiling. But Michelangelo made it. But the idea was the animosity and the envy of Leonardo da Vinci against Michelangelo. That's one. Second, if you go to the Alhambra in Spain, this was built in the 12th, 1300. Michelangelo was a bit later. Yeah, a bit later. during the Italian Renaissance, 1500, the Alhambra was 12, 13, 1400. You go to Alhambra, you can also find painting on the ceiling. I suspect, it's my casual reading of art history, that they took from the idea, Da Vinci and the Italian artists took the idea from Alhambra. There was this room actually in Alhambra where the room represents the universe. And, there's a light coming in, and then there was this painting. And you find this very erudite painting on the ceiling from Muslim artists at the time. So, so the Renaissance and Europe was on threshold of a long secular boom. Important word, secular boom, secular. And what we're doing now is this book and this chapter is talking about secular history. Secular history. This does not talk about secular history. It talks about the secularism from another perspective. So you have two not opposing, but two differing ways. Two different narratives. Yeah. So for much of the Hall mentioned Michelangelo, Da Vinci, he mentioned also this Sistine Chapel, 1508, and Thomas More's Utopia. Now, how many of you read Thomas More? Utopia? Yeah, you read. Yeah, Utopia. Okay, good. Yeah, true, exactly. And all of you should read. Okay, before I end, I want to go through on other tasks. Okay. For much of the Middle Ages, the arts of civilization had been more developed in China and Islamic world than in Europe. Arts of civilization developed more in China and Islamic world than in Europe. You may ask your grandfather or your father, in the 60s, University of Malaya offered the subject of history of science. And what they did was to study history of science in China. Some who study in UM, I think in the 70s would know. This is the idea of, before Mpuazis and Mpuazis. They read history of science in China, and this becomes a very important subject, and we have lost it. Many historians would agree with the scholar Michael Mann that the point in which Europe overtook Asia, there was a point in which we always think that Europe is ahead of Asia, we are behind, we are primitive, we are backward. But there was a point in which Europe overtook Asia. There are a number of books which have been published over the decades. Yeah. Okay. Please share.
The genius of Arab civilization, sort of the Renaissance.
Yeah, who's the author? Many authors.
I don't know how to bring what is.
Yeah, okay. It must be the library also. Yeah. We check, yeah. And the Europeans recognize the genius of Arab and Muslim civilization. Yeah. Yeah, true, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. MIT. Right. Yeah. Yeah. But the thing is, you find these books published in the West. Not in the, I know there's subcontinent, there are some in Malaysia, well, maybe coming up over the last few years. But we know more of this from the West. So Europe overtook Asia must have been about 1450. The period of European naval expansion, very important. Period of European naval expansion and the Galilean revolution in science. Now, two important events. One is the scientific revolution, Galileo, and there's another one, Brahe, and so on. I think, in fact, the sun-centered universe has been debunked. I'm sorry, was opposed by the monks and the padres in the West, and they wanted to kill one of them. And then the European naval expansion. Again, Europe only became a maritime power in the 16th, 17th century, not earlier than that. So again, now the talk about Malay maritime, whatever, would have to counter this and would have to engage with this. Of course, European maritime power is militarist. Again, it's about militarist in nature. Even their trading ships, when they were coming here from Europe and from India, they departed here. Their ships that carry goods of the Dutch East India Company and the British East India Company, they carry weapons, they carry cannons, especially from Madras to Phuket, to Aceh, and to the rest of the Malay archipelago. Though, as Mann also argues, many of the processes which made this possible had earlier origins. And okay, so this is the background in which Hall has given us. Now, my last point in this book is I'm just going to read out the phases, 5 main phases that can be divided in which the exploration, rather the breaking up of Europe took place. One is a period of exploration. These are colonial words: discovery, exploration. We don't discover anything. We live there. Okay? We don't have this nomenclature of discovering, okay? or of exploring. We're already there. Okay? So this is a European nomenclature. For example, people ask me, who discovered Penang? I say, why? It's a now question. Now question. Should not be asked. Similarly, and I will ask them back, who discovered Langkawi? Who discovered Tioman? Who discovered Singapore? It's not a question. It's a European question. And then if they still insist, which they have many times over the decades, Sultan Kedah discovered Penang. They said, so again, that question is very crucial to the audience that I was trying to narrate an anti-colonial stance. They still ask the question to me. It happened last Saturday. I was giving a talk to one group of people. Majlis Datuk Kedah. So one of them. Anyway. So period of exploration and then period of early contact. Early contact, conquest, settlement, and colonization. So again, our ancestors, we are part to that period of early contact, conquest, settlement, and colonization. 3, the time during which the shape of permanent European settlement, colonization, or exploitation was established. Example, India, Malaya, West Asia, Africa. 4, the phase when the scramble for colonies. Remember this. You've taken history in Form 5, Form 6, you should know. Huh? The scramble for colonies. I remember still, I took history in 1976. So I was in Form 6, 76. My teacher, always, when he was talking about history of China, and we were, what scramble of colonies? Why must China be colonized? Actually, China was colonized. China was broken up by every European power conceivable. Not like Malaya, actually. From the Germans, the French, the Portuguese, all scrambled. The Shantung Peninsula was that part that the European powers came. So, you see, history of China is a history of grievance. One history of reform from the Song dynasty until now. Every period is a reform period. You notice it not, history of China. And then every period is a grievance period. China is attacked by barbarians. And the Great War of China until now. Okay, so the phase where the scramble for colonies, markets, and raw materials reached its climax. This was the high noon of imperialism and led into World War I and the 20th century. Okay. The fifth phase that Hall outlines the present. He wrote this in 1992. The present would be when much of the world is economically dependent on the West. What's happening now? Even when formerly independent and decolonized. But we're not only economically dependent, we are also intellectually dependent. There is one corpus that spells out academic dependency. And what are we dependent on? We're dependent on ideas, we're dependent on theories, we're dependent on funding, we're dependent on journals. In fact, when I avoid these days having collaboration with the Orang Putih. Okay? When we collaborate with the Orang Putih, they will assume that we are the enumerators, we collect data. They are the theorists. And this sentiment is present until now. So this is where not only economic dependence, but intellectual, academic, and intellectual dependence. So what are we learning and what are we teaching in universities? This is why I think one of the functions of universities in Malaysia is to be sites of resistance. If we do that in America now, you'll be taken out by Trump. I mean, the students and professors of Columbia have to resign when they make statements pro-Palestine. But fortunately, we don't have this situation here. As long as we resist the right the right object. But important that we are in the process of knowledge production, we resist the character of the knowledge that we receive. We resist that books. You also can resist your professors who provide you with European American textbooks. And I told my class, I resist this. We don't have American textbooks in my class. I expunge American and European textbooks unless they're very, very important, because they have gone against their canons of empiricism, reason and rationality, two important features in the European Enlightenment. And that's why people like Habermas needs to be debunked. Even Chomsky is for the genocide, of course, apart from Epstein. So again, you look at, you go through this important, that's why it's important, all of us doing graduate studies, the subject history of science. When we see the origin of ideas, the interlink between our ideas outside, especially Europe as the pivot, and how it came to us, and how we mitigate and look into the flow and transmission. For example, if I were to say all Europe is bad, no, it's not that. I'm not against all of Europe. I'm not saying that, because what came us from Europe came from Islam. So we need to have this power of discernment. And also, again, last point, second last. Many of us think that modernization comes from Europe. Yes and no. I'm talking about Malay modernization, not Chinese, okay? Not others. Malay modernization, part of it comes from Al-Azhar, comes from the kaum muda who in Malaya and Indonesia and Sumatra went to so-called Middle East at that time to study Islam and Islamic theology. And from there they came and they brought in modernization to this part of the world. So again, being colonized is not the only way to modernize. And that's a false statement. You have Japan not being colonized, you have Iran not being colonized, but they're modern. Thailand is yeah, true. Thailand is a crypto colony. So yeah, true. So again, it's Europe is not the only source of quality. Okay, so I'll stop here. I will continue with session 4 on the age of exploration and so on. Yeah, sure. Sure.
Put in something, you were saying, put in something. But can I say that before European came, the Arabs sort of colonized us? But they colonized us not to conquer, to spread Islam. So that they came first before the European.
Yeah.
So they sort of this enlightenment from the Islamic perspective already came to us.
True. Where the Malay archipelago is concerned, or why the term colonize is used, it refers to the act of dominance and control. The Arabs, the Indians, and others who
Came to trade and to spread Islam.
it is, yeah.
To control.
It is, yeah. It's not to spread. It's not to control. It's not to dominate. It is to transmit and to assimilate.
And they taught us how to resist as well.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So the process of assimilation, the process of interaction, and again, it's important to see that in the Malay archipelago, like the Mongols came from Central Asia, 1300, and they raided Anatolia, they raided West Asia, they raided Iran, they raided India, the subcontinent. But what happened was that they were absorbed into the population that they conquered. So they became a part of that population. They became part of the local population. They embrace Islam, they embrace culture, they embrace.
He must be Muslim.
Yeah, and the Mughal, they are Mongol and Turkish dynasty, and Iran, Safavid is a Mongol dynasty. So they became part of the local culture. So also with the Arabs, the Persians, and the Indians over the millennia. I'm not only talking about after 632. I'm not talking about after 632 AD. I'm talking before that. They have been coming to this part of the world, across the Indian Ocean, and across between Sri Lanka to Phuket, Sarandip, and they crossed the peninsula to Okio and to China. What happened was that those movements, they assimilate into local society. So it's not anyway a form of colonialism as such. So this is where we talk about this. We're talking about this modern colonialism. Before Europe, you see, this is the phenomenon of the white man. The Romans, Europe, the people in Europe learned from the people of Rome. The Romans colonized Europe. So the traits of the Romans, one of which is being aggressive, being acquired by the Dutch, the Anglo-Saxons, and all that. Okay, I will continue on with section 4, isn't it? Okay, I just want to refer to Nakib Alata's book. Yeah.
You better listen.
And if I know that all of you are familiar, I assume that all of you are reading, but reading Nakib's book you need to have a certain background. I wasn't. I was asked not to devolve into the work of Nakib Walatas because I don't have the sanad.
Oh, yeah. You tak pandai.
Yeah, I was given no atasian. Yeah.
Not hierarchy, not up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I understand. I read his book. I love his book. I read, but it takes me I have to put where my comma is. Then I digest.
Yeah.
it. Don't worry. I read it. I love it.
Yeah.
You understand, no?
But yeah.
He's comparing atas with who? With the Chinese guy? Tanjung Yi. So good luck to him between China and Malaysia.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Good luck to you.
Yes. But again, when you read any book, for that matter, especially certain books, it's good to have a certain background, because he writes this from, again, critical resistance, non-European perspective. And here he quotes philosophy and philosophers. Those names are important. He doesn't quote Abu Huraira, Muhammad, of course, that is also there. But if you look at the index of this book, you want to know a book, you read the index first. There are two index. One is general index, the other is index of proper names. If you read, look at these names, for example, Alfonso de Albuquerque, Dante, Thomas Aquinas, Aristotle, Saint Augustine, Avicenna.
No, Europeans.
Yeah, these are European philosophers. I mean, when I first read this book in 1978, when I was a first-year student in Shah Alam. After 1 year after that, you came in. In 1978, actually, I really know these people. I mean, I've read philosophy when I was in school. But my point is this: I know all this when I was in Form 2, Form 3. So it facilitated my reading of Alatas in 78 when I was in the first year. But the point here is that when you read a book, you must know that the book is part of a larger discourse. It's not an isolated piece of work. And it builds on, interacts, reacts to earlier discourses. And this is how you have to do your thesis. Sorry, this is how you have to do a thesis. Not just citing one and then that's it. No, your thesis is a product of the discursive engagement with many sources, many of which would be contradictory in terms of perspective and so on. So this is what Alta has done. I read further. Saint Barnabas, of course, you know, and then Boethius, philosopher, Paul Van Buren, Teilhard de Chardin, Auguste Comte. Those who take philosophy, you don't know philosophy, you don't know Auguste Comte, I think you better drop out. Harvey Cox, the famous City of God, the secular city, which forms a major portion of chapter 1 of this book. You can get, I think, Harvey Cox in Kinokuniya. René Descartes, Dharma Kirti. Dharma Kirti is a figure in the Sri Vijaya period. Meister Eckhart, the German philosopher, cited by Sir Hussein Nas, Al-Farabi, of course, Sigmund Freud, Vasco da Gama, Al-Ghazali, Etienne Gilson, von Karnak, Martin Heidegger. Martin Heidegger is a famous philosopher.
So is that Western knowledge?
Yeah, that's knowledge that has he was engaging with the knowledge produced in the European sense. Okay? Because he was Nakib was saying that one of the character of knowledge is false knowledge. Okay, no, sorry. And then Okay, Pope John, Soren Kierkegaard, Danish philosopher. I think some of you know, one of the easier philosophers. Immanuel Kant, J.C. Van Deur, Dutch scholar, Jacques Maritain, H.L. Mencken, and then Nietzsche, Nietzsche, Fakhruddin al-Razi, another interesting Islamic philosopher, Rousseau. If you want to study about the nation state, you have to read Rousseau, Bertrand Russell, Schiller, Moritz Schlick. These are he cites some of those scholars from the Vienna School of Philosophy. The circle of Vienna Circle of Logical Positivism in 1932 that established a way of looking at the world, which denies anything that is non-material, that is fuzzy, that is speculative. It's very empirical. So this has influenced also history. How some historians, I wouldn't mention names, look at history and how they deny history that cannot be seen or that do not have a date. Okay, so he cites the Vienna Circle in chapter 2, and then Sisyphus, Albert Camus, Spencer, Paul Tillich. Paul Tillich is anti counterculture figure. Max Weber, of course, the famous sociologist, and he's also a priest. When Max Weber wrote about several books, including The Protestant Ethics and Spirit of Capitalism in the 1900s, he was not writing as a sociologist. He was writing as a priest. But we read him as a sociologist. That's where we're wrong. I think we have to reread Max Weber in order to understand why Europe has developed in what it is today. And then Wittgenstein, W.H. Wright, and Zarathustra. So these are, Zarathustra is a god. So these are the figures mentioned in Islam and secularism. If you have this background, it will be easy for you. One last thing. This is a long, of course, typical of Rakib Baratas, no full stop.
Yeah, that's why I had to read slowly.
Yeah, and I'm choosing, okay.
And then I need a dictionary because some of the words I've never heard.
Okay.
Sorry, but I'm like,
Oh, thank you. All right, thank you. I'll read this one. I already found a full stop. After I'll read after the full stop. Sorry, semicolon. Emulation of the allegedly universal reality of drama and tragedy. Okay? Drama and tragedy. It's in the discourse of Rakib Baratas. It's not the dry prose that our professors produce in their Scopus journal. Drama and tragedy is spiritual or transcendental or inner life of men, making drama and tragedy real and dominant elements in human nature and existence. These elements, altogether taken as a whole, are, in my opinion, what constitute the substance, the spirit, the character, and the personality of Western culture and civilization. In other words, the crucible of Western culture and civilization is the Greek drama and theater. That is the fundamental beginning. It is these elements that determine for that culture and civilization the molding of its concept, molding, acuan. Always these are the figures, the images, the molding. Selalu Syed Nakib dia sebut the crucible and mold, acuan. Kita ni hasil daripada acuan yang kita buat sendiri ataupun dibuat orang lain yang kita masuk dalam acuan tu. So the molding of its concept of knowledge and the direction of its purpose, the formulation of its contents, and the systematization of its dissemination. systematization of its dissemination. And this is what we fail to do. We fail to systematize our perspective and disseminate it, so that the knowledge that is now systematically disseminated throughout the world is not necessarily true knowledge, true in italics, but that which is imbued, another favorite word of Nakib Alatas and Sa'usinas, with the character and personality of the Western culture and civilization, and charged with its spirit and geared to its purpose. Period. But this is some of the gist, the spirit, the culture imbued. We are imbued with that, the spirit of European civilization. And therefore, we have to expunge it from ourselves. We are exorcised, in other words. I'm trying to find the word exorcist in this book, maybe towards the end. But we are exorcised. We are exorcised by European civilization. Therefore, we need an exorcist to expunge ourselves. With that, I end the session today. Thank you very much.
And I got a 3,000 word essay to write on this. Degree also you have to write 3,000 words, right? Yeah, 3,000 we were.
Under nursery class.
Yeah. What did I do?
So actually the issue is, yes.
It is the crisis, misdiagnosis, and conflicting responses. The Islamization of knowledge for that is based on misdiagnosis of the crisis of modern life. Can you explain to me what this is all about? I have to write this. 3,000 words.
Exactly as
40% of my essay, of my score for this term.
yes. And this is what Nakib has delved into, the crisis.
Critically evaluate this claim with reference to Syed Nagib, Ismail Faruqi, in the lives of Fazlur Rahman, Syed Farid Al-Atas, and Balinas. In your answer, says whether the crisis is fundamentally epistemological, ethical, or sociological, and examine the implication of its position.
This is from one of our classes.
Can you, honestly, I say I tend to ChatGPT. Can you explain to me in simple language what does this guy want? And he explained to me. I say, okay, now I understand. Thank you. I said, it's simple.
Thank you, Professor, for the incredibly profound and thought-provoking lecture. As always, you've pushed us to look far beyond, and I'm certain that there must be many thoughts and questions in the room, so we can take one question as we have a constraint of time. So the floor is open if anyone has any questions.
Yeah. Question or comments?
First of all, okay, I mean, we can see that the biasness, the racism, and everything of the European against us are colored people, whatever, brown. And so the issue here is that there must have been some weaknesses among the Muslims, model of governance and Muslims themselves that allow this thing to happen, number one. For example, you are saying navigation. Through navigation, they conquered and colonized us. But why their navigation, they become so powerful? Because of the Ottoman and Osmanli, they closed the entrance. And due to the reason of the security of the empire, Ottomanli Empire, whatever, they allow that sea to be open to the Europeans. So that's where we are, because of the pretext. Like what has happened to US now. After 9/11, they become so occupied for internal security that even the rightful people, clean, humble, no nonsense people, they don't want to go to US because it's too fussy and preoccupied with the security concerns. So that was the same case for the also Ottoman Empire. And that was the one that gave the opportunity for European to dominate the sea, to dominate the trade, to dominate all those. So I can see, yes, they are hunger for power, but we allow that to happen. So that's I would see it from our weakness point of view. Rather than that, they are always there, power crazy, they want to rule us and they want to do it wherever the opportunity comes in. And they have been doing it in the Middle East in today's term. But when Iran is stood against the whatever hegemonic and whatever power, now they have come to their terms.
What is a repeat of history? They were in the borders of Iran, right? Oh. Yeah. Yeah. They were, of course. Yeah. They have penetrated Iran. You see, when Vasco da Gama broke into the back door of 1498, what we had was you call Islamic Lake. The Indian Ocean was called an Islamic Lake. That arc of the Indian Ocean was a civilization by itself. Okay? The littoral states from East Africa to Aden to Hormuz, Indian subcontinent, these were civilizations, and these civilizations interact with one another by trade and culture, and they practice the philosophy of mare liberum, open seas. The Muslims do not control and do not stop trading and do not use law to stop anyone from sailing through the Indian Ocean. So again, it's because of that system, because of that mare liberum system that the Portuguese saw, and they came and they destroyed. So they are the ones, they destroyed that freedom of the seas, and they began to create rules and regulations as to the use of the seas. So this is what happened actually. And also they closed the streets of Hormuz. Then, 1500, they already have this engagement at the streets of Hormuz. 500 years later is now.
Actually, this is the same thing. I have read the later part of the history and earlier. This proposal to open the Suez Canal to connect the Indian Ocean with the Mediterranean. It was a proposal on table during the time of the Khalifa Sani, Usman radiallahu ta'ala an. He stopped it. He said, no way. The Firangis, they will come because that's the route close to the Makkah and they will disturb our place. So let it not open it. But eventually, after the First War, Second War, when Muslims they dictated it, that you should open it and then you connect it. And since then, they started dominating the region. And then after that, you see what kind of problems happen with the missile. Then they put a gangster country there.
Yeah,
basically to cut the kapala of the Orang Arab so that they will never rise. So this all fitna came because of the Suez Canal. So that's why I'm saying, so there we must be smart enough to understand and now put our house in order before we blame to the others. So that's my concern. So that's not a first proposal. It happened from the early days of the Islam.
Ben Nabi has allowed, he said that we have allowed ourselves to be colonized. Colonizability. Colonializability. So,
I told her, no, I bought this in England for you. No wonder the smell is different, not like the local one. Is it? Yeah. So this is when now we all have to get our mind. Mentally, we have to, yeah.
Concept of knowledge imperialism, as you spoke about, is so important, because once we realize that it is there, then only can we start fighting against it, right? There's another question, a lady in the back.
Yeah, I would like to ask Prof regarding colonialism. Is it a reaction to the presence of Islam? All throughout history kita nampak kan, Islam, the presence, the spread of Islam too. Is it a reaction to that, especially the Crusades and all that?
Yeah, the Europe lost in the Seventh Crusade. There was, the Castilian, yeah. Yeah. We got to look at the discourse from the Crusades onwards, and the Europeans lost the Seventh Crusade. So some narrative says that loss, the beginning of colonialism, is because they want to redeem what they've lost in the Seventh Crusade. This was about 1200 something. And so in 1494, the papacy gave the authority to Iberia through a treaty called Treaty of Tordesillas, 1494. So for each country to have one half of the world. So that's how, in the material sense, this conquest began to happen. But Europe is already envious of Islam in terms of what happened in Spain, the establishment of the Fatimids and the other Muslim empires in Spain. So Europe already, Christendom, actually, when you talk about that, you have to refer to Christendom. And Christendom means the Catholic Church, which collapsed in about 1450s. So it is due to that envy that they wanted to know about Muslims and the lands in Africa and in Asia. So that's how and when colonialism began.
From Christianity, you mean?
Yeah, there are elements of the sacred. Sacred language is used in terms of establishing a new world, in terms of exterminating people who were not chosen by God. One of the mottos that the Portuguese use is Mata Moro. Mata Moro is the motto by Saint James. Saint James punya motto, Mata Moro means kill Muslims. So that's Saint James motto. Mata Moro. Mata means kill. Moro means Islam. So they came from throughout Africa to Zanzibar and to Malacca, essentially is to kill the Muslims. And in fact, is that when I think dalam buku about that's genocide. That's genocide. And when the Portuguese were holding at the Red Sea, the Gulf, the Aden, those who were coming to Mecca Orang Melayu lah, orang Melayu atau orang India from the east, they cut the ear. This is how they treat Muslims. So the dehumanization, you read Utopia, you read John Moore, you read others, you can find the image of Eden and the image of those who are lesser. And that's us. Animal imagery. So that's how it is. The exotism. Edward Said's book, Cover Orientalism. The exotism of so-called the Levant, the Arabic world, and the street charmers in the subcontinent, and the exotica of the Malay world. So that brought them here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. And I think these conversations will definitely continue out into hallways and in our researches and our writings. And once again, we express our heartfelt gratitude to Professor for this insightful session and our deepest thanks to Her Highness Tunku Aziza and our esteemed guest. Oh, maybe on Eid I could make it again. Yes, definitely, inshallah. Inshallah. And so before we officially end, we would like to invite everyone to gather over here so that we can have a photo to commemorate this episode.